Hi. I was thinking about honesty and trust. And what got me thinking about it was an encounter I had with two ladies the other day. So I was in one of the local resource centres availing of a service, and there were other people doing the same thing. And in order to get your place on the queue, you had to register with a secretary behind the counter who would take your details, what it is you were looking for, who you wanted to see, and the usual community resource centre type thing. Anyhow, while I was there, I noticed that the lady behind the counter was very short with people and didn't seem to have a lot of respect for the people that were in there. And I felt this during my interaction with her, and then I sat down. And as I sat down, I watched the same thing play out again and again. And I thought, what is actually happening is there is an individual who has elevated themselves. They have used their position, and in some way they have a position of authority. Because we need to, she is like a gatekeeper. And so in order to get the service that a person wants, they must first go through this individual, and that gives a person some power. And my experience was that she was abusing that position by being difficult to interact with. But I said nothing, I was as kind as I could possibly be. And then I sat down in my chair and I watched it play out a few times. And I watched one or two people. There was one man in particular who could spot what was happening the moment he seen the lady's face. And he just, he filled her full of compliments and how great she was, and she was kind to him. And he got what he wanted really quickly. And I thought it was funny. But there was one lady who also had a difficult time, and she sat behind me, and we eventually began talking, and she expressed, or together we both kind of expressed at the same time, because while we were talking, other people were being served, I suppose, or they were having their details were being taken down, and they too were experiencing the same difficulty. So we began talking about it, and it turned out she studied theology. She was a really nice lady. But we both seemed to agree that what was actually happening, there was a lot of things happening, but one of them was that this lady was disconnected from her own humanity. She had lost her own humanity and her ability to have compassion. And I've been looking at a lot of things, and actually today, well, let me say who first put me onto this. Jesse Cabrera speaks about how our conscience is the book of God's book of law is our conscience. His book of law was put inside every child born onto this planet. And every time our conscience tells us we are doing something wrong, it is God's law that's speaking. And we both agreed that with this lady, she had abandoned God's law. And I spoke about this in a video I'm about to post, maybe tomorrow. But again, it's the conscience. It's about how when our conscience shows up after we have said or done something wrong or mistreated another, it makes us feel shame. And if you're narcissistic or rebellious or disobedient to your own inner voice of goodness, well, what happens is anger fills in that place instead. And I've dealt with a lot of people in my life who, when they were forced to feel shame having been called out, they would turn to anger. And their anger would be saying this to you: if you think that's bad, watch what I do now. And they would do something 10 times worse to let you know that I'm the boss of you. And that's a very, very clear example of a narcissistic personality disorder. They would rather go into combat with the intention of destroying your soul and your spirit, just to prove that they have power over you. And even though this was not as severe as that, it did bring up the conversation. And we spoke about how the Bible talks about letting the dead bury the dead. And when the Bible is saying that, what it's talking about is people who have embraced the 7 deadly sins, I think they are called. And I don't remember all of them, so I will not talk about those right now because I might get it wrong. And they have denied the fruits of the Spirit. So I'm walking down this lane again, and we will see Dunleary on the other side of the ocean. But it's a place in Dublin. But anyhow, they've abandoned the fruits of the Spirit. They've said to God, I don't want to feel good. I don't want those things. You know, I want to have things my way, and I want you to bend to me. Their ego is in control. There isn't any humility. And we had a really good talk about that. And to bury the dead, which is what I was trying to say, is the dead are those who have killed the light of God that lives inside of them. They are no longer connected to God because they have let anger inform every decision and every behavior that they've made in their life. And as a result, that light, that strand of pure, brilliant, beautiful light that connects them to God has died. They've killed it. They've destroyed that part of themselves. And that causes a lot of pain, I believe, for God, who is just pure innocence and beauty. And God can't stand to look at something like that. And it was also explained to me again by Jesse Cabrera in Narcissist Chronicles, and he's such a great teacher. But it's also been explained to me that when you say to God, I don't want you, and we know that the Bible says and that God says, there are many rooms in my house. In other words, I want you to live in my house. I want you to reside in me like I reside in you. And when we reject God, when we say no to the most sacred and perfect and beautiful offering, to live in a room in God's house, to be in God, when we say no to that, He has to let us have our way. That's what He does, because why would God want anybody to live with Him who doesn't want to be there? This will cause so much disharmony. And that's part of the reason why Satan and his companions in deceit and destruction of God's kingdom were ejected from heaven, because they said no. But they wanted to be as God. Satan wanted God's place. And he was already in heaven, but he was ejected from heaven because he didn't have humility. His ego had taken over. There was an equity in him. He no longer had the grace of God. He denied it. He said no. And that was one of the conversations I had this week. And I realized that what it was that these people, because of their experiences in life, good or bad, caused by others or caused by themselves and their need to have control, that they had lost the ability to trust, to open up in a way with discernment and I suppose intellectual strategy. And what I mean by that is to be able to make good judgment about the people in front of you, so you know when to be open and receptive to another person. And they never developed that skill, because before it could be developed, which it needs to be developed on good deeds and other things like that, I suppose it's pretty complicated, but it needs to be developed by somebody who wants to grow, and they don't want to grow. So what happens is, instead, because of their negative experiences brought on by somebody else or themselves, or their reaction to somebody else's behavior, what happens is the trust inside of them dies, and the human bond that we need to create with other people never happens for them, because they reject it before it gets a chance to come into life. And it's all because of trust. So I want to make some videos about trust and how precious it is. And I want to do it because of this conversation I had with this lady. We both had opened up to each other, and we connected on a human level, and we were able to speak without any judgment for each other in it that was negative. And it was a lovely short experience, and we both enjoyed each other's company, and it was just an expression of humanity, and it was so nice to have it. And so she inspired this video, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it, and I hope to talk more about trust and how precious it is, and how it's lost and how it's won. So thank you for watching. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're happy. I hope you had a beautiful breakfast, lunch, dinner, tea and supper. Namaste. Be amazing, because it's worth it, and you are worth it. Thank you. Bye bye.